All right. Once again, we put out the call for listener questions, and we got enough to throw together another Q&A episode, which gave us the excuse, nay, the pleasure, of inviting our pal Michaela back. Welcome, Michaela.
It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
So I want to kick off again with a couple of questions for you, Michaela. Last year, we learned about your deep, abiding love for horror and fantasy, and your interest in, but at that time, not a ton of experience with role-playing games. I want to check back in on those topics. So, Michaela, my friend, have you had the opportunity to play any role-playing games yourself this year? And what's that been like for you?
Well, Rob, it's been quite a year. I have had the pleasure of playing RPGs with you, Robert, and Katie.
Yes.
We are in the midst of Delta Green, which is
so
great fun.
Yes.
Absolutely disgusting. Absolutely up my alley. Robert, yourself, and I had a night of Fiasco, which was brilliant.
Yes.
So much fun.
Yeah.
You can't think. Don't think. If you think, you're lost. Just so much fun. And
I can't wait to return to that.
Yeah,
such a good time.
Same. I mean, Delta Green is fantastic, but Fiasco, guys, you gotta try it. It's just, it's off everyone's rocker.
Yes.
Awesome.
It was such a good time.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about horror and subgenres. Now, I assume it was obvious to you, probably from the jump, which specific novel Book 2 of Strange Eons was riffing on.
Well, all of the fish people.
Was that a clue?
It kind of threw up a flag for me, a very Innsmouth-y flag.
Yes.
But there's also a bit of a Call of Cthulhu in there as well. This like deep diving into, you know, who am I, and uncovering all of these facts and what have you about how the hell people got there and whatever. But yes, Innsmouth, all of that.
So it was. Book 2 was a little different than Book 1, which is pretty much straight up survival horror. It's all about fear and gore and no relief. And then Book 2 took this shift, bringing in some more of that Lovecraftian, cosmic, or eldritch horror, more of a focus on slow building dread and lack of information rather than pure terror. There's dangerous knowledge, mysterious religious rites working in the background, twisted, partially human monsters in the community just out of sight, working at goals we don't understand, and beginning to finally, in this campaign, brush up against the ancient, unknowable entities that do not operate by any rules we can comprehend. So it's like all about like what is even happening, who the hell's even doing it, why, how do we stop it, can we even stop it? And it was extra unbalancing because, as we've talked about in some of our conversations, the ostensible heroes, the characters played by these four people, were treated by the community that they were in as if they were the villains, making everything extra special difficult. So all that's just set up for my actual questions for you. Number one, did you as a listener, did it feel like a significant shift in tone for you, or just the story evolving? Like how aware of a shift were you, and how did that sit with you?
Well, the logistics of the asylum and getting out of the asylum and that confined space was very helpful, actually, at the start. I'm sure it was very helpful for you all as well, not knowing who you were and all. So moving into a place that you think you are going to have more autonomy and power over where you can direct yourself. And Katie, you actually said something about this. This was discussed when you talked about the shift into Book 2. I was like, yeah, I thought we'd like rest, shop, shop. I love how you were the first to say shop. So I'm like, yeah, when are we going to get more cool stuff? Oh, we're just going to pilfer it off dead people. That's fine too. That's shopping of a sort.
That's also the game.
Fantasy shopping.
Yes, absolutely. But it didn't feel like an unnatural shift. It did feel like that's where the story was taking you, but it was still jarring in its way because you truly were, just like you all, hapless.
Yeah.
Just wandering around, getting these dirty looks, people knowing to fear you, and in the case of you were Roni at the time.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And Grip in particular. Oh, and of course,
Yeah.
Ray. All right. I got a whole thing about that, guys.
Oh, good.
I'm so pissed at you. Just want the record to show.
How dare I?
Yes, how dare you, once again. But it didn't feel jarring. It's just, there's a lot of this that you just have to give over to. I mean, when I say a lot, I mean all of it.
Right.
It's a wild nightmare train, and there is no stopping it. And then that's two big thumbs up for that nightmare train.
Okay.
Chugga, chugga, choo, choo.
And when you think about either all the various subgenres of weird horror or like specific staples or tropes or touchstones of weird horror, are there any that you are either expecting in the future or hoping for in the future? I'm just kind of curious about what your expectations or hopes might be, and I'll try to keep my face very blank so as to not give away whether they might be coming or not.
Oh,
Or if he's going to mine you for more ideas.
Exactly.
oh yeah.
That might...
Go easy on us.
Jeez. All right. Well, I can't help but think of the big bad elder gods. We have these things that were sleeping under. Help me. They were sleeping
Under Iris Hill.
Iris Hill. Thank you. But those aren't big or bad enough. So there's clearly something more there. And yeah, I think with the scum, just the hordes and hordes of scum and undead. I love a horde of anything.
Yes, who doesn't?
But especially undead. So there's that, and I don't know. I can't.
How many elder gods do you think the party will see with their eyes before we're done? Give me a number.
Well, the magic number is 3.
There we go. All right. She's called that. 3 is the guess.
Yes! It's canon, right? You're getting
We're
3 now.
one down. We're one down then.
I mean,
so it's just
that's
2
my
more.
guess as well. I'm like 3.
Was not comfortable with that question.
I
I was like, why is the
no.
answer any?
We haven't seen any with our eyes. Well, you kind of have.
I kind of have. My mind eyes.
And I will just say,
My
that
mind
wasn't even an
eyes.
elder god.
You said it was.
No, I did not.
He lied to you. He's full of
And
lies.
I don't know.
and treachery. Yeah, but other than that, like this adventure constantly surprises me. So to have any
Us
hopes,
too, Michaela.
yeah, I bet.
You're not alone.
I bet. So to have any expectations, I think would kill my happiness.
Oh, okay.
And also, I look forward to you defying my expectations.
Oh, fun,
all of
fun,
you,
fun,
absolutely.
Yeah, no spoilers for Act 3, but has Act 3 gone like everyone has expected?
Oh my God, no.
I actually want to ask Michaela
Yeah.
one question. What were some of the biggest surprises for you in listening? I'm only just in terms of this question asked right now makes me...
Should I go back through my chat history, Michaela?
Yes, probably. Be like, what the fuck was that
I
about?
got one every time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all right, well, here's my Ray moment.
yeah.
I had a red wedding moment with Ray's death.
Oh, really?
I'm dead serious. So when I read The Red Wedding,
Yeah.
I reread that page 3 times.
I did that too.
And then I threw the fucking book across the room. And I wept, and I wouldn't pick it up for a week.
Yes.
I did not throw any of my technology, but I did rewind 3 times. Like, no.
that
Okay, all right.
actually happen?
It did actually happen, but I don't think he's dead. No, he's fine. He's fine. They're gonna find a scroll, and the scroll is gonna do a thing.
That
He's
no
got
one
a
can
potion,
cast
and he's
because
gonna.
Ray's the only one who
No
could have
shit.
cast it.
Yeah, but John Henry and I were we were devastated, and I can't remember if we had listened at the same time, because sometimes we're out of sync.
Yeah.
So I think it was one of those. Did you listen to that? Did you finish? I'm like, no, I don't think I finished yet.
Oh, you'd know if you'd finished.
And then the next day, I sent him a text. I was like, what? You were crafting this beautiful and bizarre young man
Yeah.
who was equal parts vicious and tender, and it was such a loss. I cannot imagine what it was being a player to lose that person in your party, but as a listener, I was It was inconsolable and furious.
Yeah, I think if you want to know how it felt like to us, I think the end of 51, which is the one where we finally kind of put Ray away, is the one where you can tell. Because really, the night that it happened, we were all a little bit in shock.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And then we were just kind of going. And then Johnny and I made a choice. Paul wasn't comfortable with it. We switched gears. But by the time we got to 51, that was actually after a little bit of a recording break as well. We had to come back and then re-sit in that place and then kind of say the goodbyes to the body, say goodbyes to the character in sort of the form of a funeral. And that's the one where it just was like, wow,
heavy.
It's brutal. Yeah.
Really, really heavy. So that was certainly surprising. The morphing mutations of Johnny, that's something that you have no choice but to say yes.
Right.
And so I don't have any questions because I have all the questions. So I'm just saying yes. I mean, and this also kind of dips into favorite moments, but because they were vastly shocking to me. So the stranger, the more we learn about the stranger, the less I understand about the stranger. All I know is she is fucking gross and bad, but really, really, and she's playful as well, which kudos to you creep. It's terrific. All of the Daria, oh God, and I have a lot of questions about that, but with Ray gone, it's like, does it matter? I mean, it does because Tima, but all of that exploration and unearthing, no pun, but all of her tormenting with the demon inside of her, that was profoundly disturbing, and I loved it. The head fruit tree, that was so trippy. That was unreal, and I think I had super weird dreams that night. I'm almost positive.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, and all things Gripper and the Dabs, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need that
Spin-off.
offshoot spin-off. I need it desperately. Make it so, Picard style. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much in advance. But yeah, I mean, as I said before, I'm constantly surprised. You all have an uncanny ability to take your audience off guard, and I've thought about this a lot. I mean, it's a testament to you all as performers and writers and just storytellers. You know how to keep someone going. You know where to drop the breadcrumbs. This was a lot. This was a lot. This book.
Well, let's turn it over to the listener questions. You want to kick us off there, Michaela?
Absolutely. We'll start with a question from Alex for the players. What would be each character's battle theme?
Battle without honor or humanity from Kill Bill.
Yes!
Every step of the way.
I endorse this. Everything I have.
Just because it comes up in my head so frequently, I like it for Dabwick, is the A-Team theme song.
Summon!
Terrific.
Dabwick loves it when a plan comes together.
That's right, yeah.
My first thought that I had was Red Right Hand, but then I was like, that's too easy. So then I feel like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Men at Work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For just Dora and Tima together when they were alone in the mirror with the soul sliver and stuff, stuck in the middle with you. Monastery.
Yes.
This feels too easy and like a cop-out, and yet I think I'm going to botch the title, the immigration song.
Oh yeah.
For Grip, I think that's a good Grip
Absolutely.
battle song.
Absolutely.
100%. The next question is from Katie and Rob. What's everyone's favorite piece of Matt's art for Act 2?
I have an ultimate favorite, but I have some runners-up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to botch the I don't remember the chapter title, but I think this was 50 part 1, the rays looking under the mace or the morning star with the blue light of what's her name shining
Namira.
on him.
Yeah.
That was real good.
That's Harvest Part 1.
Yep.
It's a draw for Vicroni, but there's the 2 different versions of him looking into the camera, and one of which I think it was the ambush one, where it's very much a James Bond one. That was pretty fucking sweet.
Where it's through the body.
Yeah. The
Hellions.
Dora under the bed.
Yeah.
With those Don Bluth eyes.
Hidden.
Is amazing. But I think ultimately my favorite from the chapter Help. Was that Help?
Yeah.
Yep.
Where it's the 4 original companions doing their Abbey Road album cover. I just think that's amazing and beautiful. And the fucking Eiffel Tower is in that.
It's
so,
in it.
that one's my favorite, I think, overall.
It's so good.
So I like the 2 Daria hands that complement each other. Though
Yeah.
There are many, many episodes apart. But my favorite actually is Hope. Because it's the nicest piece of artwork that we have.
Oh, Dora looking up the
Dora
staircase,
looking
the
up,
ray of light. Yeah.
Oh, my favorite one that includes Dabwick is the Gripper and the Dabs walking through town, having that chat.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Gripper and the Dabs for sure. But I think my favorite is actually Hideous. It's the stranger fight. Matt is amazing. Never let him go. Hold on to him with all of your hands. Just maul him.
I am so excited about what we're talking about for book 3. It's going to be some pretty fun stuff.
But this sick yellow, and then the Harvest Part 1, all of this blue on Ray, and even that little bit of blue on the stranger. The way he can accent these images that they become so indelibly fixed in your mind, just fantastic. They're all wonderful, but I love Hideous.
Act 2 is just stellar. I mean, where they're all surrounded by the tentacles, and it's just there's so many great things.
Oh, right in that homicide. Shut up.
I love for Dabwick's debut, we get the look through the keyhole of Dabwick holding the door.
As the door's dissolving from the ooze on the outside.
So great.
So
And
cool.
coming
As
up
they're
from
every
the
life choice they've ever made.
Yes.
Dabs as the frog.
peeking
coming up
over
out of the well and with
That's
the
great.
undead soldiers.
My favorite is Heaviness, which is the laughing tyrant.
Yeah, that's
with
on my
the
list,
glowing eyes and
The ceiling caving in from Namira in her giant form, like barreling down as Grip is just going crazy on that hallway. Yeah, Weirlie and that one are on my list. And then I think my favorite is probably 85, the final time in the Wailing House with the two Darias flanking Dora. I love that one. Yeah. Which also brings in episode 50, part 2, where Bates is first summoning the phantom of Ray. So like Ray's shadow is in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that one so much. It makes me think of like a John Byrne piece of art, which is really, really so cool.
the close-up of the bloated zombie guy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that was so good.
And if you haven't watched the making of video where you see how Matt used himself as a reference for it, it's very fun.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's he
It's really
started off of his face
show it to
and
you.
hand as a model and then, blew it out. It's really cool.
Outstanding. Is that on the Patreon page or is that on?
It's on Facebook, I think.
I will also say I have a personal affection for the. I think I was still Roni at that point, where it's him with the hat on and he's just pointing at his two eyes like I've got my eyes on you.
Yeah.
Thinking about
So
all of that.
Perfectly capturing that
Oh,
character.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the madness. The specific madness.
That
yeah.
specific so maddening madness.
Have we talked about the evolution of the yellow sign on air yet?
I don't think we have.
So if you are someone who enjoys the art and you want to go back, you will discover we have been seeding the yellow sign into the artwork from before the players ever encountered it. Mm-hmm. If you look at chapter number 23, which is when they first go into the East Ward in the asylum, there is a picture of the dead woman in the wheelchair over the river of blood. It is an intense zoom in. The blood is making the shape of the yellow sign on the floor, which if you know it, it is patently obvious. But if you don't know, you might miss it. We then brought it in on chapter 28, which is the picture of young Ray sitting on Gulliver Vaticus's knee. The wallpaper in their house is a series of yellow signs
Oh, wow.
Gasp!
And then, if you look closely, you will find it here and there after it becomes part of the story. Like in 77, I think it is, where Dora's looking through the window. All of Weirali's wrappings before we even see her are a deconstructed yellow sign.
That's fantastic.
And then there's like a blatant one on the wall with the keeper, etc. So keep your eyes out for that. It's fun.
Love an Easter egg.
Awesome. All right, next question.
Christopher wrote, the PCs have deeply intertwined backstories with all sorts of intricate connections with each other and with the plot. I would love to hear more about what your session 0 / character creation process was like, both from the players and Rob's POV. I'd love to know how much of these connections came from the players, how much from Rob, and how much from the module itself. I would also like to know how this affected the creation of your backup characters. And Alex had a similar question. The people your characters used to be, were those backgrounds offered in the AP at character creation, or are these all things that you all and Rob worked together to make?
It's fun to return back to this. We talked about this a lot in the first maybe 10, 15 chapters, but that was now years ago.
It had a lot less context, too, because now we went home.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. So just to... maybe I can kick off with a refresh. Yeah. The players knew nothing. They knew absolutely nothing. Our conversations before we began were about me essentially checking in with them and saying, I think it would be fun as an experience for you as players in an environment where you are having the same experience as your characters and maybe having the same experience as our audience, to not know anything and allow me to reveal that to you. And then we talked about, the certain point at which that would flip. They might have the possibility of getting their memories back. And then along the way, as they have introduced interests or ideas or stories about their character, I've incorporated those into what I know about their backgrounds. So the backgrounds were all created by me, but have been, in the 5 years now that we've been recording this, part of an evolving process that is driven by both of us, and will at some point be turned over entirely to them.
Are there I've played other APs, and I know there are like background options in the form of traits and things like that. I don't know if there is the story of the constable in Thrushmore, and that could be a PC. Like, is there anything offered in the AP, or can you not tell us?
There is not anything offered in the IP in that way. Sometimes the campaign traits will suggest a story. That's not so much the case with this particular group of campaign traits. And how I ended up picking campaign traits for you was story first, and then I found a campaign trait that seemed to make sense.
So in the recap that just aired this week that we recorded right after we finished Act 2, you were talking about what's in the book, what's not in the book. And you had mentioned that Dr. Trice was originally just some random person that the PCs had killed. Yeah. So, is us, the PCs, having a sordid past in Thrushmore, is that baked in to the AP? Or it was because we had to have killed someone for that to be a thing. A thing, right?
Yes. The idea was definitely that they were working for this person doing nefarious things, but no real suggestion as to what that is. So all these elements, you were the constable, two of you were married, you're the kid, you were the guy who did the wet work. None of that stuff is specific to the AP. Gulliver Vaticus doesn't exist anywhere in the books. Tima doesn't exist. But what's fun now is, I've been talking to some GMs who are running this AP for their tables. It's fun now. Some of these elements that I created or we created together are now making their way to other tables as part of canon. It's so amazing. There's these wonderful GMs I've been talking to who have incorporated Gulliver Vaticus and Tima and the concept of a constable gone bad into their own stories, and they're doing it in their own ways and telling their own twists on it. But it's really fun to see that kind of stuff gets seeded out of our table, then out into the world, and little jamin doors, it spreads.
I love that so much. In our ideas about how all of our characters and all of our campaigns all exist in different multiverses, now we're adding other people into that thing, and we don't even know who they are. That's really cool.
It's an awesome thought.
Yeah.
And then backup character question. Do any of you want to touch on what? Because it's also a little different than other games we run.
I have no memory of
It's been a while for you, hasn't
why
it?
I created that particular character. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, this combination of classes seems cool, and this seems convenient, a place to pluck her from. I say every time that we level, and we have to also level our backup characters, I'm always like, wow, it'd be really cool to get to play this character someday. But then I hope that I never do, because there's only one circumstance in which that happens, and I don't want that to happen.
So basically, with each of these, the players created their character, and they came to me with an idea of who they were, and then to a certain point, we worked together to flesh out a backstory, and then to a certain point, I've had to say, let's finish deciding about your backup character's story once we hit the moment where they need to become a main character, because that can be the point where we can start to lock things in. Things are a little different now, but when we were in the asylum, I had to basically say to everybody, well, if your character dies, obviously you were at the asylum, and we have to figure out what that means. I hope your character doesn't appear there, because it's actually better. Like, take Stasi.
Yeah.
I mean, Stasi's story is baked in to be involved in book 2. So it was great that we didn't have to try to integrate her earlier. And it's kind of great that Barnabas came in when he did, because his story has ended up meshing so deeply with what's happening. And I don't think either of us had envisioned it being that tied in ever until it started happening.
No, I mean, I think not until he became the fixation of Dora's madness.
Yeah.
I think he would have shown up and then would have faded into the background, and then I don't know, maybe not even seen him again until we were in Thrushmore.
Yeah.
I mean, like it would have been a very different thing.
At what point did you guys decide that Barnabas had been seated?
Well, okay, so we knew that he'd had a brush with something Elder Mythos related. That was baked in at the beginning, but
Because that's what drove him to the asylum in the first place.
yeah.
But yeah, I forget when we made the actual decision.
I don't think we decided he was
I don't think we had when we did the holiday holiday stories. I don't think we had decided it then, but
we locked it after
it was
that, didn't we?
after that we decided. This is
Yes. Oh, right. So it was in our conversations about let's flesh out Barnabas's backstory a bit more, so Robert can prepare a story for the character. And that's when I had the he's got to be seated. Oh, there's this whole other branch of Jamandor worship. Well, that's a great way to bring that in without having to be a knowledge check. Now we've got somebody who experienced it, who can share this whole other cult, the cult of the Sentinels, basically. And then, that just kind of, then it's in the air, and Robert plays around with that, and we find out what we find.
Where did Dabs come from?
Yeah.
Dabs was just started as the urban druid template, thinking that a halfling would be a great match for that, and starting to think of this Gaiman, Mayville-esque character, but never really had to connect to any of this.
We hadn't gotten far enough
Right.
with their story.
Right.
Because we weren't
Who
planning.
knew?
We were planning on it.
Like, once Paul brought me the idea in book 1, I was like, oh, I really hope Ray doesn't die in book 1, because it'd be perfect to introduce this character on the boat, right? Everything about being on that ship with Skywin makes sense. And we got to that point, like, great, awesome. So now Dabwick will just be part of the ongoing thing, and, hey, Paul, why don't you mention what Dabwick's doing? And then all of a sudden, oh shit, buddy. All right, let's
Right.
figure out what Dabwick's deal is.
You said that the Sullen Starling wasn't supposed to enter into the story this early. Is that part of the engine that drove the Sullen into port so soon?
I knew before we started that I wanted to put the Starling in Thrushmore, just to get Skywin involved. It ended up being, I mean, if you do a listen to Act 2 again, the first person we meet is the person who becomes your main character.
Yeah.
Right.
You are literally the first person they meet in Thrushmore,
Great
which is
entrance.
never intended, obviously.
Yeah.
Which is so wild. I mean, the first piece
That is wild.
of art that depicts a person includes Dabwick.
So it's the city. It's the city connection that has maintained the drive to keep Dabwick engaged and involved, and then got seeded. And now there's this Myacnean Mun thread left to look at. Oh, I'm speaking too much.
No, I think that's okay. Let's come up.
He came up. He came up.
He came up already.
Cool. Should we jump on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rebecca asks, for that amazing holiday episode, how much of that was in universe lore and how much was you all being amazing storytellers?
The in-universe lore is the 3 specific holidays. The Days of Wrath, Crystal Hue, and I've already forgot it again, Katie.
I just looked it up.
The Ritual of Stardust. I had known for a little while that I had wanted to do a fight with the backup characters, just to give the players a chance to kind of flex their muscles and as a nice change of pace. And I didn't want to do that without reintroducing more about their personalities and their backstory to the players. So I came up with this idea of like, how can we get them to talk about themselves? What would that be? And I was just like flipping through the Galarian wiki, and I came across the Ritual of Stardust. I was like, oh, huh. What other holidays are in this vein? Oh, yeah. Oh, they're all kind of connected to... They're all solstice ID. Oh, my gosh. So on a ship that travels around the world and has a crew of people from all around the world, might they not have created their own tradition that incorporates everybody's religions? And so then I gave a series of questions they could ask, and I didn't tell them how we were going to do it or why. And then when the night came to do it, I actually had not been planning on doing it that night. So all I had was just a series of chicken scratches and a couple of bullet points. I was like, you know what, this is the time to do it. This is the point. And so I leapt into that, knowing that because they had prepared stuff and because they would jump into that kind of role-playing episode, I knew I could kind of, if I gave them some structure, they would fill it out, which they did beautifully.
You basically told us to come up with a story of, and now I forget what the 3 things were, but there was a story of
lost love, or somebody you wanted to apologize to. There were these prompts.
Journey you wanted to take.
Or a revenge or betrayal.
Yeah.
Something like that. And I know, like, I delved into some Galarian lore for
You sure
Barnabas's story. I forget what the name of the... A Baelor attacking
Karamzada, I think.
Yes, and so that's like baked into the Galarian lore, and I just sort of inserted Barnabas and his pack into that.
I remember thinking I had answered a different question than you put me in the order for. Mm-hmm. So we were on the question that I thought I had answered, and you didn't nod to me or anything. And I was like, oh, did he forget that does he think I already went? Did he forget about me? I ended up being last, and I realized that the question that I was answering, I was like, oh, that actually is the question that my story relates to. And I just hadn't realized it. So I just sat there like all day like, hey, is it my turn yet? Like, I don't know when I'm going now. Like having anxiety over it.
That was fun. I remember I specifically wanted Bates to think of his story in one way, and for everyone else to think of it as to have the complete opposite viewpoint of it. Because he is a child.
My dad took care of me.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all of us are here going, oh, God, buddy. Oh, God. No.
Thank God for Nasa and Mira.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who were like, no.
No.
Hey, Maeve.
Because
Don't forget Maeve.
Because once again, this is a
Important
horror
Bates.
campaign.
Yeah.
She wants to fly to the moon on a purple dragon. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have a group of questions in what I'm thinking of as the what ifs category.
Alex asks, what would have happened if Dora failed that check? You know, the one you mentioned that would have completely changed her. Would Tima have taken over permanently?
So Alex is referring to the spell that Dora cast and held in her hand and tried to use on that woman in red who wouldn't die during the big scrum and outside the gatehouse of Iris Hill.
The episode where you were the maddest you've ever been
I've
in your entire
never
life.
been so mad. It was so frustrating. I was constantly in the worst possible position. I don't want to give too much away because we still haven't seen the spell, and I don't want it to. If it never comes out, that's one thing, but I don't want to give it away before it comes. But mechanically, it would not have. No, Tima couldn't have taken over Dora mechanically by the rules as written. Obviously, Rob can do whatever he wants.
And does.
But I don't think that he would. But I don't think he would usurp my agency to that degree.
Of course.
But it would have fundamentally changed her character to have executed a spell of that nature upon a living being in a way that the person that we have established her to be now could not necessarily bounce back from.
Yeah.
That's all I can really say, Alex. I'm sorry. We'll talk more on Twitter.
And I suspect we will see some iteration of this thing come up at some point.
Yeah.
It seems impossible to me that it won't happen at some
Inevitable,
point.
yes.
Yeah.
Now that I'm like, I want people to know what it was, so that I don't have to talk like
It
this
is
all the time.
Chekhov's spell.
It is.
Yeah.
Although there are other spells coming down the road
I know that are even
worse.
yeah, even more differently challenged.
Yes.
I don't even know what to say about them.
He said worse. So
Yeah, there are worse.
all right. Michael asks, could you have just burned Iris Hill to the ground at the start? Or would that not be allowed?
There was so much stuff in Iris Hill.
Anything can happen. So Iris Hill did not have plot armor, and Book 2 was very much a sandbox, as we've talked about kind of again and again at this point. So they could have gone anywhere and done anything. However, I think they probably realize now, if they had attempted to do anything to Iris Hill when it was completely filled with everyone that you now know was
Slaughtered.
in there, it would have gone very bad very
Run
quickly.
away!
Yeah.
Run away!
Or TPK.
Yeah.
TPK. I don't think we would have been able to run away from the sheer hordes of forces that were there.
I am glad that I didn't have to find kind of ham-fisted ways to steer you all away from Iris Hill. You all seem to instinctively understand. Let's wait on that one
We
for a
all
while.
knew that it was the end of act.
Sure. So I didn't have to take measures. There's some suggestions in the book of what happens if the players go here first.
We poke the bear.
Yeah, we would have told that story. I can't imagine it would have gone well. But also, I don't know, maybe they would have found a solution.
But you know us pretty well, too. And I think after however many years of playing with us, you know that we are able to recognize a challenge rating that is higher than our own. and avoid it.
But
always,
sometimes
but-
you all are also like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going to do this.
Well, when you say we,
I mean Johnny.
you mean John.
I'm kind of always
And
prepared for the answer to
sometimes-
be fuck it.
Sometimes Johnny is able to convince us.
Yeah.
But
Usually
but
late at night.
Usually it's like 11. And we're like,
And Johnny's like, what if we do XYZ?
yeah. And we're like,
Great.
hey, that sounds like a
Fine.
great idea.
Very sleepy. Sounds
but
good.
I think the rest of us threshold for that level of fuck it is a little higher.
Yeah.
I don't think that we were ever in danger of going directly to Iris Hill.
Right.
Johnny, is it fuck it? It's not fuck it, is it?
It is and it isn't. It's a combination of sometimes I feel us as a table sitting back and not wanting to make choices to move the story forward because we're being very careful or very precious. And sometimes I'm like, we gotta do something. And then sometimes it's a thing of if I feel even the slightest bit of railroad,
Yeah.
then I'm just like that's one of my own problems as a human being that I am working on continually. Of I don't like being controlled, and so when something tries to control me, I tend to buck very hard.
And over all of our years of playing, I mean, one of our agreements is if you make a choice, I'm going to let you make the choice. Once in a blue moon, I might say, have you put some thought into that? But if you all say this is what we're doing, then my
You
job...
also have subtle clues that perhaps you don't know you're laying down.
Oh, sure.
that the rest of us are like,
Sure.
I don't think Rob wants us to do.
I would also like to give great credence to one of our times that we were playing many, many years ago now, where Robert basically said something along the lines of, are we going to give up on this? And Robert gave this stirring speech basically like, I give up every fucking day in my life at my job, at XYZ, blah, blah, blah. I do not come here to give up. I do not come here to roll over. Like, no, we are
You did not
going
come
for
here
it.
to not kick down that shitter door.
Exactly. Yes. Did not come here not to kick down that shitter door.
I don't remember it being as verbose and eloquent as that.
It was.
It was pretty good.
It was
good.
really great. It was,
I mean, it was probably like 2 o'clock in the morning,
Yes.
but yes.
We were
it
much
was.
younger at that time.
Yeah.
And one more in that category.
All right. Mandy asks, how would it have impacted the story if Dabs and Grip hadn't gone to clear out the rats and found the elder things?
That's a wonderful what if that's hard to answer. Because there were 2 ways into that room, one of which was the hole in the ground in the stable, I knew they were going to always find them because they weren't just going to walk away from the hole in the ground. I did think it would be fun once we were there and Paul was down there in the water and Grip was there. I'm like, oh, I should go. Oh, if they went in the well, they could come out from another way. That'd be fun. And it would be a nice little nod back to the skill challenge. So that idea of finding them this other way, I kind of gave him a little push to like, why don't you go down the well? Why don't you see what you see? Why don't you go that was me doing a little bit of gentle nudging, but not because I didn't think they were going to find them eventually. If they had known there was a hole in the ground and they never investigated it and left town, there would have been consequences, and I would have made sure of that. But I never actually believed that they were going to not see what the fuck they had to deal with down there. And then we have a group of questions in what I'm thinking of as the technical category.
Michael asks, do you roll dice or do you have a randomized program? If you roll, why don't we hear more of it? And Rebecca asks, you're obviously not using paper and pencils to track your skills and stats. What program are you using to facilitate your play?
Yeah, we haven't talked about this for a while either. We made a switch at the top of book 2 when we left Katie's dining room and went to a studio and no longer had space for there to be a map on the table and barely even space at this point for all the character sheets and stuff. We are using a virtual tabletop. We're using Roll20. And you will hear... I always roll dice because I have the space for it. Paul and Robert seem to... You guys do about 50-50, right?
I do about 50-50. If I'm worried I'm going to have to know something, I do it on Roll20 because that always provides the information.
Yeah.
Really important rolls I want to do with the dice.
Yeah.
I never use dice anymore. I don't want to embarrass myself by rolling the wrong one. But also...
That would never happen.
But also, I just... Roll20 does all the math. Mm-hmm. Like you can click on a condition and if you're shaken, it just takes the -2 off. You don't have to remember it. So I just prefer to let Roll20 handle the math and know that for the most part, there's some things where I have to say it's +4 to whatever I roll here. But I just like it better. We can turn the sound on for the bloop whenever you roll a die, God. If people like that. But I prefer to just... let the machines do it.
If there's a lot of buffs or things, then I will use Roll20 because, like Katie said, it does the math for you. It is ultimately more fun to roll a die, I think, but I bounce back and forth because if the die is screwing me left and right, I might just switch, or vice versa. If Roll20 is giving me horseshit, then I might switch to the die. So, yeah, 50-50.
I probably use the machine more, and then we'll roll the occasional 8-sided or D6 or D4 afterwards if it's something that's getting added on.
Your action points and your inspiration you tend to roll on the side. Yeah. And I try to keep the sound of those in the recording when we remember to roll on something that makes a sound. But like Johnny's rolling in a padded tray, we can't really hear it. Sometimes we can hear Robert's and Paul's, and I try to keep it in. And I'm trying to be better about remembering to roll my dice not on paper, so there will at least be the sound of dice happening, because I am rolling all of mine live.
I will say that I do have like 6 sets of die here.
just because you can't not have them?
Yeah, I don't know. I have Dora's dice here. I just don't roll them.
It's nice that Roll20 does the math for the players, and even though it's a lot of time and effort to set the maps up, it is pretty cool the way the maps give each of the players the individual view of their characters.
Or not.
Or not.
not,
So they
yeah.
can actually see what their players see or don't see.
More
They all
often
have
than
their
not
own. Oh,
don't.
Michaela's. Yeah. Isn't that cool?
Yes, that's amazing.
Oh, we should.
Yeah,
Here,
you
I'll show
should
you.
show
Yeah.
me, and I also want to see some of this art that you guys are always like,
I got you. I got you.
wow,
covered.
like I want to
got you
see
covered.
that
Let me.
before I leave this place too.
Why don't I? I'll
I
move you.
got it. I got it.
Oh, hit me.
That's like vision out the window. You can open and close doors.
Isn't that amazing, Michaela?
This is
These are the beds that I hid under.
Got smashed one
Like-
after the other.
Yeah, like
wow. I have often
And then-
wondered when someone asks, "Can I do this?" It's like, no, you can't see that. I'm like, well, how does he know?
so. Then, with the character sheet is interactive. So, like, if I need to make a knowledge check,
Yeah.
you just click it and it comes up
Shut the
over
front
here.
door.
Or if I want to cast a spell,
Oh,
look at what
I'm
that
not
second
looking at your
spell is.
spells. Wow. It's a nice list. I saw some intriguing words there.
I rolled so high on that one.
Oh man, don't waste it.
Wasted.
Oh,
We have 2 questions left, and we have received a number of related questions from various folks that I can boil down to basically tell us a bit about your recording and editing process. Basically, like how much time at the table turns into an hour of the podcast. Are we listening to and playing the music live? How much editing happens, and so forth. We do all of our recording in a studio. There's no sound effects happening here when we play. Typically, when we will play for about 4 hours at a time, and that is generally 2 episodes. We typically get about somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours worth of tape for what will turn into an episode. Sometimes that means close to an hour, sometimes that means a little bit longer, depending on how much stuff needs to get cut out. There is a lot of editing, but not of content.
There's not a lot of rearranging.
No,
There's almost no.
If there's ever anything I'm going to cut out that the players, I almost never do that. So there's a couple of episodes where we recorded them. So specifically, 19, 20, and 21. This is when Gull was deathly sick with tumor infestation, and we were all thinking, well, surely he's going to make the save this time. And so we had like 3 hours of us kind of going, huh, okay. And then somebody would be like, well, I can do this. I'll do this. And then we'd have something exciting happen. And then we'll be like, well,
that didn't work.
let's make the save. Surely it'll happen. All right, wait. And then it didn't happen. I'm like, well, should we keep rolling these on air? Or, but what if he dies from this? We can't have that not happen on air. It was terrible.
was,
So when I got back to those episodes, I reached out to all of them and said, just so you all know, I've got 3 hours of material. I am going to rearrange all of this and put it into some order that makes sense and tells a story.
Yeah.
and is of interest to anybody.
And is of interest to anybody. So I am going to cut a bunch of stuff out, and I am going to move things around, and please listen to them before I post them so you can tell me if I have screwed up anything that you couldn't have said that before you did XYZ. But that specific situation's only happened once.
Did you also rearrange the divorce conversation?
No, that was one conversation. The other conversation where I had to let them know I have cut a bit out.
Yeah.
Because we had
Very circular at the table,
It was circular, and then we had some crosstalk that I could not edit in a way that you could hear 2 people making a point, and I was like, they make these points elsewhere. Can you all please listen to this? Are you okay with this edit?
Right.
But otherwise, if their characters have said it, I leave it in.
Yeah.
If they do it, I leave it in. What I cut out is all of the waiting for Roll20 to roll the dice. All of us going like, what do you think? Should we talk about this next? Or should we do this next?
Or looking up a rule?
Looking up a rule. If that takes a long time, I will cut it. I will cut that stuff out.
If we're getting really, really goofy.
Yeah. And then I will edit out a certain measure of filler, the ums and ahs and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, and then all the music and sound and all that stuff is added after the fact. And a last question.
If you could go back in time, what would you do differently in Act 2? either as characters or players or podcasters? Just a little question for the end.
Grip, I think someone's coming.
What?
Ray could have just said, Grip, I think someone's coming. That might have changed things.
I would have heeded Rob's blatant warning about what Jane was about to say and figured out a way to either make her not say it or silence it or plug my ears. I don't know. I would have. When I go back and listen to that episode right when we're seated,
Yeah.
it's very painful the way that you are like telling us the
Begging-
worst
begging
possible
you.
thing in the world is going to happen, and please, please, please don't let it happen. It's just so awful.
But you also had no way of knowing how bad it was going to be,
exactly.
right? You just didn't know.
And Whirl, I would have done it later anyway.
Yes,
but,
it was gonna happen in
yeah,
book
it was
2.
definitely going to happen, but I would have made it not be Jane.
Right. Oh, Robert looks like he's got something.
No regrets.
I feel great.
I would have rolled fucking better.
Yes. yes.
Yeah.
God, you had some
so
rough
Rough
many
runs.
stretches.
bad
Couple of rough runs on the old
stretches.
dice.
Well, I mean, and also the fact that your madness crunch always makes it harder for you to hit
Yeah.
is not doing you any favors.
Yeah.
I feel like I would have remembered to maybe not take that magic missile damage because I had a shield
you
up.
had the shield up.
There's like a
My
couple
cousin
little
Ben
things like
called that. He was screaming on Facebook, "He's got shield! He's got shield!"
But I was like, in terms of character stuff, like I was really happy with what everybody was doing. Some really fun, awkward, uncomfortable, messy, friction-full encounters where I wasn't sure if what was more dangerous with what was going on between the characters or what was outside of us.
I look back at the series of episodes in Fort Hill Course with feelings. You know, I mean,
Really?
well, because the thing is,
Are you sure?
Are these feelings good feelings or like...
well, but I'm trying to communicate that it's not as simple as I would have done X, Y, or Z differently, because the fact is, one type of combat that we had not done before that point was a shit ton of enemies.
The gauntlet.
And when it began, it felt very interesting and exciting. And I kept thinking, this is not going to keep going on this long, surely. But the dice were telling a very different story, talking about stretches where Robert in particular, like he could have ended that, Grip could have ended that fight in half the time if Robert hadn't been rolling 2s and 3s for like, what felt like weeks. It felt like weeks.
It really did.
And
It was several episodes.
and
It was like
at a
3
certain
episodes.
point, I was like, I gotta do something. But like at that point, we were so deep. I'm like, what do I do? They're undead at that point. Like everything there is undead. They're just gonna keep going. So then we started talking as a table when we hit that point of like, we gotta find ways to bring something besides combat into this combat scenario, and that's where some of this focus on the conversation between the players, the Roni's madness impacting the relationship with Dabwick, latching on to when Katie made the 10:30 p.m. choice to go by herself into a room, like trying to turn that into story. So I feel like we did our best with where I let us get to, but I don't.
And then we just tortured you by continuing
Yes.
to stay.
So thank you everybody for sticking through all that. We hope we made it interesting in the end to listen to. There was a lot cut out and a lot of us banging our heads on the table going like, I mean, every single time Robert would roll, there would be just 5 minutes of us going, oh my God, yeah. Buddy, I can't believe it.
So when we got into the second excursion
to
to Iris Hill, and it was starting to look like
Yeah.
another gauntlet,
Yeah.
were you panicking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Luckily, I was almost completely out of resources and could go running around doing other things.
Yeah, I told myself when we started that third episode of the fight, if this does not end the fight, something's happened. We realized walking into this, like, something is going to dramatically change the situation. And fortunately, that was the episode that finished it. The first episode was pretty fun because there was all that weird
belt.
shit with the doubles and the belt, and nobody could see what anybody else saw. And the second episode was fucking dangerous as they were all pinned in. It was the third episode in the fog, which was a life-saving tactical decision, but also a stretcher outer of the fight, which they needed because they were going to die otherwise.
Right.
But that whole night I was like, okay, if this isn't over, I'm dropping something. Like, something's crazy going to happen. Oh, thank goodness.
Either they're going to run away or they're all going to die right now.
Yeah, something's going to happen. And then the other thing that I think about all the time is, and we're in the middle of it right now with Act 3, the eternal question, how much do I hold their hand in terms of preparing them for what they're going to experience versus leaving them completely in the dark? I want them to have an immersive experience, but
We're having it.
One of the hallmarks of this particular AP is drastic change to the status quo every single book. And you can only communicate, it's going to be very different, without getting more specific and have it still be a surprise. And so I always kind of wrestle with, should I tell them more? Would it make them feel more comfortable? Would it be helpful to the audience? So I wrestle with that. That's something I wrestle with.
I mean, again, I don't want to talk about Act 3, but it feels similar to Act 2, where we don't know what we don't know, and so we have to figure that out first before we can make meaningful choices.
Right. And fortunately, at least in Book 3, we're on that cusp of finding out some of what we don't know, so that's good. And when you feel that, that's when it starts to feel like, okay, great, now they're going to get on top of this. They have found out what they didn't know, and now they know how to find out how to know it.
Yes.
Acting versus reacting.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, keep up the great work, y'all. I mean, truly, it is. That's such a fun final question because, yes, it's you have the hindsight and wherewithal to look back and turn around,
Right.
and all of those. But what you're crafting is perfect. As ugly and horrible as it is truly perfect. And the way you navigate together as individuals and as a collective is really fun to listen to. I'm always on your side, even when I'm deeply frustrated with your choices.
Oh, that's true love.
It is. It really is. It's real.
Just like a real show that you watch where you're like, oh man, these characters, they're such knuckleheads.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have much more colorful words. But yes, knucklehead.
I have the text thread to prove it.
Well, thank you so much, Michaela. It's so great to have you back. And we will, next week it is our Act 2 recap and review. And then the following Monday, Act 3 starts. We're very excited to share it all with you.
Cannot wait.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Michaela.
Dark Nexus is a creation of Plug and Hum Productions. This podcast uses trademarks and/or copyrights owned by Paizo Incorporated, which are used under Paizo's community use policy. We are expressly prohibited from charging you to use or access this content. This podcast is not published, endorsed, or specifically approved by Paizo Inc. For more information about Paizo's community use policy, please visit paizo.com/communityuse. And for more information about Paizo and Paizo products, please visit paizo.com. That's PAIZO.com. Dark Nexus uses music and soundscapes by Sirenscape. Check them out at sirenscape.com. That's SYRINSCAPE.com. Opening and closing themes, along with additional music, composed by Rob Kauzlaric. Artwork for Dark Nexus is by Matt Wahlquist. Special thanks to Toy, without whose generosity this project would not have been possible. And thanks to DMCP, Richard and Ari, Paul and Shannon, Chris, Scotty, Jason, Jess, Joe, Chelsea, Matt, Dave, Darren, and everyone we've gamed with over the years for all the memories and inspiration.